Hey everyone, welcome back. Have you ever wanted to be a better communicator or a better leader, but you didn't feel like you as an introvert could become one of those? Well, my guest today, she is going to blow your mind because that's what she aims to do, to help introverts to overcome obstacles that maybe they feel like they can't overcome. She has a YouTube channel of over 3,000 subscribers and it's continuing to grow by the day. And not only that, she is an instructor at the University of Texas Center of Professional Education, and she is a Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach, Speaker, and Trainer. I'm so excited to have my good friend Antoinette Griffin on. How are you doing today, Antoinette?
Hey, Nathan, I am doing great. It is so great to connect with you after a few years.
I know, and it's so fun to be able to work on projects with you. It's interesting because I've gotten a little bit of the background of getting to know you over the years, that you are so dedicated and almost to a perfectionist level of wanting to have everything together. Everything that could go wrong, you want to know. That way you could circumvent that. You truly do think through a lot of things. I'm curious, when you were growing up, was that something that was kind of intuitively inside of you?
Oh, preparation. Well, my dad was 30 years Air Force and he just lived and breathed Air Force life. And so, yes, I grew up in a very regimented, very prepared household, especially when it came to any kind of special event like taking a car trip or anything like that. Everything was totally prepared ahead of time.
I love that. So, where did you grow up? Most military families travel quite a bit. Was is that kind of your story, or were you based anywhere specifically for a long period of time?
Well, my parents had me when they were older, and so he ended up retiring when I was still just gotten out of elementary school. So, born in Louisiana, started first grade in Okinawa at Kadena Air
Really?
Force Base, yes, and then transferred to North Carolina, and then settled in Austin, which is where he retired and where I grew up.
Wow. Do you have any like memories of when you were in Okinawa?
You know what I remember? They had these great smelling erasers. So we would go to the toy store and like seriously, you would buy the best smelling eraser and you would take it to school and you would all the other kids on the base, they would all compare the smelling of the erasers and it was a big deal. And I still remember that. I would love to get my hands on one of those erasers today.
It's time to have a travel trip. You can go over and get some, or I guess maybe you could probably eBay them or Amazon them. I don't know if they still do that, but that'd be interesting. All of a sudden, Antoinette has 30,000 erasers that are coming in. Do you still use
Yeah,
pencils?
I like pencils, but I don't really use pen, just black pens. I hate blue ink, only
R-
black ink.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. I just get irritated with blue ink.
That's
Yeah.
so funny. That's so funny. It's funny because when we went to go sign our papers for our house, they told me that I couldn't use the ink that I brought because it was blue. It had to be
Isn't that
black.
weird?
It was so weird. I was like, "What? Wait, what? I can't use a blue ink pen. It has to be black." And it had to be it couldn't be a gel pen or anything like that. It had to be a specific type of ink too.
Well,
It was
maybe they
wild.
just, yeah, maybe they just love black ink too, and that's why they said that.
They just
You
hate
never
blue
know.
ink people.
Yeah.
I love that. So you said you were in Texas growing up for the majority of your life. Then what was life like in Texas for you? You had an older sister, correct?
Yes. Well, my sister got married when I was 5, so way back in Louisiana days. Yeah, so I was like an only child. So grew up in Austin. I was extremely shy. Oh my gosh, extremely shy. Through middle school, high school, all of that. It was a good town to grow up in. I didn't take advantage of everything there was to offer me at the time, like I said, because I led a pretty sheltered life and was pretty shy.
Mm. Yeah, and if you're listening, you might think, "Oh, well, she says shy. Like, she's probably, she's shy." I'm saying like She was shy to the point that she didn't want to go into the lunchroom to sit with people or try and meet new people. She would actually go into the bathroom to have her lunch, right? Rather than go and try and find some people to sit with.
Well, yeah, and obviously, I'm sure you got that story from John, my husband.
Let's throw him under the
Yes,
bus.
yes. No, it was a long time before I could share that story because it actually was very humiliating for me. And the first time I shared it, I like started crying because I was just it was so embarrassing. But yeah, it was. I remember one quarter in high school when none of my few friends had my same lunch break that I did. And so I went into the cafeteria. Nobody else was in there that I felt comfortable sitting with. So yeah, I ended up going to the bathroom over in the side of the school that was breaking for lunch, and this old smelly bathroom, and just
Hmm.
stood there in front of the mirror eating my lunch going, this is just ridiculous. This is just a pitiful life you're leading. Yeah, it was very humiliating, actually.
It's actually interesting because I've always seen you as someone who has a huge heart for people. Like you see the person on the outside and you love to just kind of go over and bring them in, which looking at you now, people go, "Oh yeah, that's just Antoinette. That's who she is." But the journey to get there, I would imagine, was a very long journey.
Yeah, because I'm always the one that used to want somebody to come and do that for me.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like my freshman year, I went to Baylor and I tried to reinvent myself, thinking, okay, I'm going off to college, I'm going to be different. And it was first day of orientation, and they told me to go sit with my orientation group. And I thought, can't just like go sit with a group of people that I don't know. So everybody's in the auditorium and all these groups, and I'm just sitting in a chair by myself, like in between all these groups, just sitting there by myself, waiting for somebody to come get me. And when finally our group leader came over and said, "Are you supposed to be in our group?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Why don't you come join us?" And so I said, "Thank you." And so I'm walking over there, and he looks back at me and says, "Are you shy?" Ugh, I was so upset because I thought, here I spent all this summer trying to reinvent myself, and I'm at Baylor just a couple of hours, and I'm already going back into my old shell.
My wife is an introvert, and the word shy she hates. Like it's like nails on a chalkboard to her. She just doesn't like to be called shy. She doesn't like to be called quiet. She wants to be outgoing. And for an extrovert, I feel like that can be really difficult to understand that perception of like what is it like to live like that? Like early childhood for you, what was that like growing up and making friends and playing with people and what was that like for you?
It was always feeling different and like I didn't belong and feeling like I was less than when I wasn't. I mean, I grew up in a middle class family, middle class neighborhood. And so I wasn't lacking anything. I never felt less than when it came to material means, but I felt less than when it came to the ability to socialize and the ability to appear confident.
So what kind of student were you in school? Were you a good student? I feel like you might be a voracious reader.
Yes, yes, very much so. And my mother used to read to me when I was little. So, yes, very good in school because, certainly wasn't going to be hanging out with people getting in trouble because there was nobody to hang out with. And plus, I was a rule follower. So, yeah, yeah, I was very good in school, except when it came to, oh, we need you to stand up and give a presentation. Then that's when the trouble started. As far as I would thought, no, I'll do whatever I can to not participate in something like this for sure.
Interesting. Did you ever do any talent shows or anything like that?
Oh yeah, talents. I was in plays because it wasn't me. I was somebody else at the time. In fact, I loved to be on stages, and that was even from elementary school. I would try out for plays because I liked that because I could become a different person who wasn't shy Antoinette.
What's interesting about that is just kind of the identities that we kind of hold, like it's the identity that you live in day to day, but then there's those opportunities where you step into a role or you step in musically to play something and it's like you become a different person. It's almost like an outlet into the world, or not even an outlet, it's almost like a connection into the world to say, oh, look, this is something that I could be. But there's always that difficulty of how do you bring that in and actually live that out on a day-to-day basis. Who were some of your earlier influences in life?
I was very involved in our church youth group because that was really my only social life. The church youth group wouldn't reject me. And so our youth director, he was a huge influence in my life because he would pay attention to me and he complimented my writing and he, sought me out and made me feel important. So he was a very big influence with me growing up for sure.
Mm. I always love to listen to like some of the early lessons that you learn from parents because I think parents instill something deep inside you that you carry on throughout your life. Some of those early lessons, some of them are difficult ones that maybe they encourage you not to become like something, but then there's other lessons that you learn from your parents that have really taught you core principles that you live your life by. What are some of those core principles that you remember being taught from your parents?
Well, my dad was pretty amazing because he just had a fifth grade education and his parents were sharecroppers. So he dropped out of school after fifth grade, went back later and got his GED, but he ended up getting in the military and 30 years Air Force, made it all the way to Chief Master Sergeant. So he made it all the way to the top as far as he could go with enlisted. And so he was always, pressing me to go for anything. I mean, because what's amazing is he spelled horribly. He couldn't do math in his head. I mean, he still lacked some of those basic skills, but he was so confident and
Mm.
he believed in himself. And so he helped to really instill that in me, which was great. And then my mother, who lacked a lot of self confidence, which is probably where I got that from when I was growing up, but she was always, treat people very kindly. You never look down on people. You want to definitely make sure that everybody feels like they're important. So she was really good with that. So it was the balance between the two of them.
That's really cool. So, when was your first job?
My first job was Swenson's ice cream. Do you remember Swenson's?
I
Because
don't actually.
you're in Oregon.
Yeah,
So
we had
Swenson's
Swansons out here.
no, Swenson's was based in California, and they were kind of famous back then. I think there still may be one Swenson's in San Francisco.
Hmm.
But anyway, Swenson's ice cream in the mall, and I it was not good because I didn't want to project my voice. I didn't want to ask people if I could help them. I wanted them to come up to the counter and tell me what they wanted because I had a difficult time taking charge as the person behind the counter.
Didn't you also get fired from a job without knowing that you got fired from a job?
That was at Swenson's.
Oh, that was at
That was it.
Swanson's.
Yes, that was because my dad had called. My dad told them that I needed a 1 hour dinner break, that they were going to give me a 30-minute dinner break, and he said that is ridiculous. If you're working there for 8 hours, you need a 1 hour dinner break. So I just came and said, my dad said I need to have a 1 hour dinner break. And then they said, okay. And then I kept calling the next week saying, well, am I on the schedule this week? No, you're not on the schedule. And then I called the next week. So am I on the schedule? No, you're not on the schedule. And then finally I called again and they said, well, actually you haven't been on the schedule because you were fired, but I'm a new manager and I'm going to hire you back, but we can't give you a 1 hour dinner break. Are you okay with that? And I said, yes, just don't tell my dad.
That's really funny. What other odd jobs? I always love hearing about the odd jobs that people grew up, Because I think some of those odd jobs teach us about ourselves. Like even it's interesting listening to you talk about that story, knowing that you're really good at sales at this point. You're really good at projecting and speaking to people. It has obviously been a journey to get to this place. But I'm curious, what were some of those other jobs, odd jobs that you remember that were just kind of the one off, like, oh, wow, that was, why did I ever do that job?
Yeah, well, when I was in college, I got a job with Kirby Vacuum Cleaner, and it was just setting appointments. So that's it. This was back when they had the classified ads, appointment setter. And so I thought, well, that's good. I can go do that. And it was close to my house. I went to this and it was in the evenings after classes. Well, the appointment setter was with Kirby trying to get people to agree to an appointment for somebody to come out and do a Kirby vacuum cleaner demonstration, which we all know is, of course, going to be a sales pitch.
Yeah.
And so I had to read from a script, and people would interrupt me and they would say, "No, I'm not interested." And I would say, "Okay, thank you, goodbye." And my manager, I still remember his name was Brian, and he said, "You tell them that they will be interested because once they see the Kirby vacuum cleaner demonstration." And I thought, they just said they're not interested. He said, "No, you let them know that this is going to interest them." And so I tried it a little bit. It was 2 nights. And then he came and he said, when I showed up for the third night, he said, "I have to tell you, you're not cut out for this." So I cried. I drove home and cried because I thought I was doing the right thing. I was just calling these people, trying to set appointments.
Yeah. It's as you look back kind of on those experiences, what are some of the things that you pull from that today to say, wow, like that, like maybe there was a lesson in there that you didn't quite grasp in the moment? Like when I started looking at sales trainings and when I started looking at different types of educational pieces that I started learning about, I was like, oh yeah, I really could have done better within this position, or I could have been a better leader, or that. And at the time, I wasn't really equipped to accept it. As you look back on some of those experiences, what are some of the things that you wish you maybe would have captured a little bit more that maybe would have excelled you even further?
Well, I don't know because, back in those days, sales, a lot of times sales really was that aggressive, reading from a script, you're going to overcome all these objections and everything. And I realized that just wasn't me. And
Mm,
so when John, John, my husband, when we started our first business shortly after we got married, and I had to go out and do sales, I thought, oh my gosh, is it going to be like me and Kirby Vacuum Cleaner? And then I realized, no, I don't have to be this pushy person because that's not me.
mm,
I can just go out and I can inform people and let them make their own decision. And
mm.
that's always been my selling style because that's the way that I would like people to approach me. And I think we can be that way. But I think a lot of people feel like they can't be good at sales because they feel like they have to be this person who's overcoming every objection and trying to do whatever they can to get the person to say yes.
Yeah. And I'm interested in the connection point of where John came into the picture because it's not just a relationship that you guys have of being married, but it's also a partnership business wise. You guys have been together in business for over 17 years now. And most people, they're afraid of even the thought of going into business with their spouse. And for you to be doing it for 17 years, I'm curious, what led you to that point? You guys meeting and seeing that connection to move forward, not only relationally, but business. But then I'm also curious, what were some of your takeaways that you go, wow, this is what really helped us in marriage, but also in business together?
So I thought that I would be working at a corporate job the rest of my working career. I was fine with that. Just working customer service, managing a team of customer service professionals because that's what I did, and I thought I would be doing that forever. And then John had an entrepreneurial spirit. He has always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so after we got married, we started coming up with ideas of types of businesses. And of course, it sounds neat, right? Anybody, you can go, oh, yeah, I think I want to do this. And it's not really like a real thing yet. But so we came up with this idea for a business where we were going to publish senior publications for senior citizens throughout the state, which is what we did for 17 years. And it was great. In the beginning, it was difficult because he's very big picture. He's very, hey, we can go do this and we can do this and we can do this. And I'm going, what do we need to get done today? Let's go look at this publication that we got to get to press, and what do we need to proof, and what ads do we need to change, and all this. And he's looking at the future. Totally different styles when it comes to business. He sees the possibilities. I see everything that could go wrong. He sees the future. I want to look at this afternoon. And he sees the big, I see the small. But we realized over time that we really do need each other because, oh my gosh, if we were just alike, then we couldn't be successful. So
Yeah.
leaning into each other's strengths has really been beneficial, to be able to do that.
I love that because there are a lot of people that are married that don't lean into each other's strengths, but pick on each other's weaknesses. And I love that because it's very apparent between you and John. Like even one of the practices I've talked about early on in the podcast of one of the things that Willow and I do is actually because of you and John, and that is to have a retreat in the year. I think you guys actually do this twice a year, but you guys go above and beyond. We'll get there one day, but you guys fly to different places and you guys spend some time reflecting of what you want for the year, how things are going. And then after you've had time doing that, then you go to another location and you meet up and you discuss together of what does that look like for both of you and to move in the direction of your dreams, to be on the same page, which is truly fascinating. In fact, I'm curious, how have you seen your goals and dreams go from separate to morphed into one? Because that's something that I noticed with Willow and I is that when we first started out, we had very different ideas of what we wanted. And then as the years have gone by, it's funny because we'll come together at our meetings where we're, after we've talked about things and we come together and we say, oh, wow, we actually want the same exact thing. There's the off thing every once in a while. Willow this last year, she was like, I want to write a book. And I was like, wait, what? You want to write a book? That's amazing. So I'm curious, how much of that overlap have you started to see since you guys have been together and because you've been doing this for so long?
Well, I think, first of all, John moves quicker than me. And so when he gets an idea, or for instance, like when he has an idea of a new venture or a big change, he gets on board very quickly. And I'm very slow as a turtle to make changes. However, it's interesting because I'll come around. And so he knows that now, that if he's patient, I'll eventually come around. It used to frustrate him in the beginning because I didn't see what he saw. And then now he's realized over the years that, okay, I'm going to sit here and wait and she'll eventually come around. And I do. I think it's the Lord just prepares me for that, even though I'm slower than he is for sure.
Yeah.
But a lot of it also, I think, is respecting. I mean, I totally respect him so much. I mean, he's such a smart and intelligent person. And so if he gets clarity on something, I try to think, okay, even though I don't see this, he's a pretty smart guy. And I think respects me as well. So when we really try to listen to each other, even if we're not in agreement on something at the time, we know that eventually we will be.
Yeah, 100%. So I am curious. So your leadership journey, where did that start? Because Were you starting to break through your introvertedness when you got your first quote unquote leadership position, or had you kind of made some leaps and bounds to overcoming some of that introvertedness? Because I've heard you talk about that, where a lot of people who are introverts, they don't feel like they could be in a leadership position or a sales position.
Well, so to clarify, my tagline is formerly shy, forever introverted. So shyness is a fear of social judgment. Introversion is the way that those of us that are introverts are naturally wired. So it's not a situational thing. It's not a choice, where shyness really is a choice. And so it's interesting that you said Willow, hates to be called shy. But hey, call me an introvert, but don't call me shy. But to answer your question, I would put myself in more and more situations to help me get out of my shyness, such as public speaking. I joined Toastmasters, things like that. Then being in a leadership position, getting more in a front facing role, but I'm still introverted.
Mm.
So I can come across like an extrovert, but I am still introverted through and through for sure.
When did you start to own more of the introvertedness and stop looking at it more of a hindrance, if that makes sense? Because I think sometimes we look at some of our greatest strengths as our greatest weaknesses, and we focus on them as a weakness versus as a strength. Because an introverted style of personality is actually really impactful. Like you said, John is the type of person that likes to run forward, barrel forward, and probably gets into a lot of trouble. And I say that because that's me. Willow is the other side of the coin, where she's constantly pulling the reins and going, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe we shouldn't go into this, right? When did you start to really own the introverted pieces as a strength for yourself?
I think it was when I started becoming an expert in introversion. It's funny because John told me years ago, he's like, I think you need to lean into this, and, you read 5 books on something and you can basically become an expert in something compared to the average person out there. And so I thought, okay, that's good. I'm going to read about introversion and shyness to really understand what the differences between the two were. So read a lot of that, and then started my YouTube channel. And then, of course, as we all know, when we're teaching things, especially when it's things that we're experiencing ourselves, then it makes us even feel more confident, right,
Mm.
about our situation, even though we're saying, hey, I'm still challenged with this myself. It gives us more confidence. So I think that's it. And then, like I said, teach in the class at University of Texas. That's the class I teach, is communication strategies for introverted business professionals, and just working with these hundreds of people, usually young adults. Most people that take my class are millennial age, and just understanding some of the struggles they go through, and helping them through a lot of engagement in this class. It's very interactive. Start to feel more empowered and feel more confident, and it's just such a charge for me to see that.
I love that you were saying earlier, in order to kind of break through that, you started to put yourself in situations more and more to get comfortable in different arenas. What are some other things that you started to do in order to break through with that?
There are several things. So in college, and of course, this was coming from the public speaking stuff, because I know a lot of people deal with that. But for instance, in college, my senior year, I was on a team with a group of 3 other guys, and it was the 4 of us. And each team had to stand up and give this long presentation. And we each had our part. Well, there was a guy on our team who was very, very, very confident, extreme, I mean, cocky, really. And so his part was right before my part. And when he stood up in the class to give his part of the presentation, he got nervous. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, he is nervous. And I can tell he's nervous. And there was something about his nervousness that made me feel better. I guess because I didn't feel so intimidated. I thought, well, if he's nervous, I'm not going to look so horrible when I get up there. And so I saw myself as a more confident person, even that, all because he was nervous. Another way of kind of like working myself up to it would be like numbers of people that I was talking to. So in the beginning, I felt like, okay, well, if I'm talking to 20 people, I can do that. But oh my gosh, I could never talk to like 50 people. But then, we all have these numbers in our head of what makes us feel more confident in these front facing roles. And so, it was interesting because even when you and I were due on stage together, remember,
Yeah.
at the Maxwell conference, and I remember you were emceeing the event, and we had the rest of us were in chairs. We were sitting there, and you were asking us questions. You know why we were on chairs? Because I didn't want to stand up. And so I said, yeah, let's have the panel. When Nathan interviews us, because I was the one in charge of the event. I said, when Nathan interviews us, we're going to be sitting in chairs and he's going to ask us questions. And then the next time you did it, you may not remember, but we were standing up. And
Yeah.
because I thought, okay, Antoinette, I think you're ready to stand up. So I told the setup people, I said, this time we're going to stand up as we answer these questions. So it was just that way of working my way up to different, let's go up a little bit more, a little bit more.
It's so funny looking like as you were talking about that. I'm going back and I'm reliving those moments, and I'm seeing all of you guys sit on the back chairs, and it's funny because even in that, like, so at that point, that was the largest number of people I've ever spoken to, and
Me
again,
too.
not only that, but that was really the first time that I really people have asked me what's it like to speak in front of a lot of people, and I think there's two types of people. When you stand up in front of a lot of people, you either get scared or you get excited about it. And I was scared to death every single time, even still to this day. When I stand in front of a lot of people, nervous as all be out. But as soon as my mouth starts opening, it's so much fun. I've taught martial arts for a number of years, and I remember having students of 30, 40 kids in a class or an adult, and it was always harder for me doing one-on-one or 1 to 5, me and 5 other students, than it would be for me and 40 students. And it was almost like you could play with the energy in the room at a certain point where you could put the energy over here and have interaction over here. And so it's really interesting kind of hearing as you kind of stepped into that even more. And right now, like, what would you say to the introvert right now that's listening? They're going, wow, I could never be on stage. I could never talk to, even, in my Bible study with like 5 people. I don't think I could ever stand up and share. What would you say to that person that maybe constantly puts a fear inside of their own mind of like, I couldn't do that?
Well, I think you and I are both living proof that we can,
Yeah.
right? Because, like you said, you were scared, and I saw and you did fantastic. Oh my gosh, total stage presence, fantastic. And, you missed the next year. And then that's when I said, I think I'm ready. I even asked John, I said, do you think I'm ready to MC and take Nathan's spot as MC? And he goes, I think you're ready. And so I started doing that. So I think as far as for the introverts out there, it's don't ever feel like you can never do that, because if anybody was the ultimate fearful of any kind of public speaking, that was me. I mean, in Baylor, I ran off the stage when I was called up to say something, literally ran off the stage in the middle of a sentence. And it was absolutely horrible. And so I would have thought then there's no way that's totally off limits. But just like I said, working up that step, one step out of the comfort zone. Now let's go another step out of the comfort zone. Let's do 10 more people than before. Now let's do 20 more people. Yeah. It's all relative.
I love that. You're such a student of life. You truly desire to learn, and not just to learn surface level, but really go deep and understand things. That's what I've always loved about you is it's not just asking a question to get a little bit more knowledge. It's about, no, I really, really want to understand this. Like not just the topical, but the nuts and the bolts of it. I'm curious, not only as a voracious learner, you're also someone that voraciously reflects. You're one of those people that I know, and I know a couple of them. Like journaling is a huge part of life. Where did the habit of journaling come from, and how has that served you throughout your life? Especially as you look back now, and like you could probably go back through some of those journals if you still have them and read back as the person that you were and go, wow, look how far I've come. How has journaling also served you? So when did it start, and how did it start? And then how has that served you throughout your life to have that moment of reflection in your day?
Yeah. And I'm going to take liberty and over here. See that little, so the little case at the very top. Inside that case is all of my lock and key diaries.
Hmm.
Ooh,
Ooh,
from
now we know
junior
where they
high.
are. No.
Yes, junior high and high school and college. And yes, actually, all the way till I got married. And then the next shelf with all those little colored spines with nothing on the spine, those are all my journals. Yes. So that's where they're at. But I think as far as what made me want to start journaling in the first place, which once again, then it was writing in diaries, was I just loved to write. And because I used to, when I was growing up, I would write stories, all kinds of stories, just fictitious stories. And so writing about my day was just going to be something that was fun. And then it felt odd when I got married to John because I thought, well, this feels odd having this like private journal. And I'm now married and we're supposed to be sharing everything. So the first few years of our marriage, I didn't journal. And then finally, he bought me a journal and said, I want you to go back to journaling. And so I'm so glad he did that because every morning, that's what I do. I journal about the prior day. Yeah.
That. And if I'm not mistaken, you also, for a period of time, you wrote stories for puppets for kids, right?
Yeah. Did you, John told you about that too? I puppet shows in the for the neighborhood. And no, I would write all kinds of stories. I even wrote a story about a woman named Mary Ann who started dating this guy named Jim Duran, and she really liked him, but then she found out he was a cannibal. And she was like, what do I do? This is going to be really awkward. I don't know what to do.
That is so amazing. I'm floored by that because I don't know. There is such a level of creativity that you have too. Like, how has creativity played a part in your life too? Because it's I'm always fascinated by people that have that creative mind that can just really think outside of the box. They put things together in terms of stories. Like I can sit out in a lazy boy chair, or not like a non recliner or a recliner chair out in our backyard and stare at the sky and like, oh yeah, I'm going to think of something really smart to say, or some great story, and it's just and just watch the birds go by. There's nothing happening here. And so I'm always amazed by the level of creativity that some people have. Have you always had that creativity, or is that something that you've generated over time?
Well, just an imagination. So I wouldn't say that I'm creative, but I would say that I have an imagination, but sometimes that can really backfire because when you have a very vivid imagination, then you can think of the things that are in your head are reality,
Mm,
and you can tell yourself some, negative stories as a result, and always the mind always goes to the worst. Oh, well, because this happened, or because this person didn't call me back, or because, this person said this, then they think this, and, jump to these conclusions and have this wild imagination. So
yeah.
it can be good in some situations, but then other situations, it's not so great because you can tell yourself some bad stories.
Yeah, it's true. And I'd love maybe for you to lean into that a little bit more because there's so many people that they kind of write off the mind of like, oh, it's okay. I'm just thinking this. Like, they allow their mind to wander into things that they shouldn't. And as you and I both know, the more you focus on something in your mind, the more that grows, the more your body responds to that. How has taking captive your thoughts been important for you, even today, with everything that you're doing?
Well, I think one of the things that I've done, which I need to be very diligent about it because when I've done it, it's really helped. And that is having just a worry journal. So if
Mm,
I'm worried about something, okay, what's the date? What am I worried about? And then what happened what did I do about it? Or what was the outcome? And being able to look back and go, oh, okay, these things that I'm worried about were really like nothing at all. That really helps to be able to once again go back and read those things. But then also prayer. Prayer helps a lot to be able to do that. And then, just getting out and walking and getting exercise and things getting put into perspective. Also, John helps me because he is one of those people that, is not the person that's always telling himself the negative story. And so he'll help put things into perspective for me too.
it's always good to have one of those people in your life.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned early on that faith has kind of been a huge thing for you. That you grew up in church, and I love this because I was listening to someone recently that said there's a lot of people that go to church. They maybe they go to church 3 times a week and they read their Bible and they worship and all these things, but they don't know who Jesus is. And until you have that relationship, like there's no comparison of understanding the relationship versus going through the spiritual practices that are there. Like the spiritual practices can be important and they are important, but unless you have that relationship, it can be empty. And I'm curious for you, how has faith and that relationship helped you in your life to overcome maybe some difficult circumstances that you've had?
Oh, definitely, especially when we had that business that John and I started shortly after we got married, because I left my job to go work that business full time. And not that we would have been out in the streets if it would have failed, because John was still working his full-time job at the time. So it's not like we were both relying on this, but just that whole idea of, oh my gosh, is this going to work? And the rejection, and then hiring salespeople, and some people not working out, and just a whole lot of prayer, and being able to see miracles
Mm.
during that time, when we would be facing a whole lot of rejection, maybe with sales, and then praying specifically about something, and then something just coming through at just the right time. So it definitely strengthened my faith, that business for sure.
When you were talking about jumping into that and leaving your career, obviously John as a little bit of a safety net within that, but as an introvert who likes security, who likes consistency, I would imagine that jump was really big. Like when I would talk to Willow about making a jump and doing something completely different, like her eyes get big and like I don't know if I could ever do that. What were some of the lessons that you learned about that of jumping out and betting on yourself?
Well, because I had left my job, I did feel like, okay, I've got to give this everything I had. So, it was okay, I hate to sit here and make cold calls, and face all this rejection, but I'm going to because, what other choice do I have? Or getting ready and going to a networking meeting when I really didn't feel like it, and it was hard to put a big smile on my face and introduce myself at things like that. But yeah, that really was one of those things that was like, okay, I've got to give this everything I have to make this work, because I did not want to feel like a failure. And looking back, it's so interesting because looking back, I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did that. Of course, the Lord blessed us, people said yes to, we were selling advertising, and it's hard to sell advertising. It is really hard to sell advertising, but that's what we were doing. And I think, and at the time we didn't know how hard it really was. But sometimes when you're in stuff, you don't realize what you're doing and how hard it really is at the time. You just get through it.
And I think sometimes we wouldn't, if we knew how hard things were, we wouldn't actually do it. Like the
Exactly.
level of difficulty it is to be an entrepreneur, to start a business, to really make any change. It's interesting as I talk to people, more and more people that have different careers in different industries. There's this similar thread that I constantly keep hearing of like, I just had to jump. And then in the end, there was a lot of stuff that went wrong. It was a lot more money. There were a lot more problems. It took way longer than we ever thought it was going to take. Or it was the very last minute when things changed around and it started to do well. Um,
Yeah.
there's always that moment of uncertainty as you're going through it. But then once you make it out on the other side, it's amazing. But you never know the trials and the difficulties that really help you so that you can be strong on the other side. When you look back on your life and you think, man, that was really hard, but because I went through that, that truly did help me to become the woman that I am today.
Yeah. It was that. It was that business. Yeah. Yeah. Because, like I said, it was so difficult. Yeah. I always tell people that starting that business and getting that up off the ground was the hardest thing that I have ever done professionally, for sure.
So, what's the big dream? What's like you're working on a book right now, which I'm really excited for. You're working on your book. What are you most excited about right now in life?
Yeah, so I am always excited about my YouTube channel. So, that's been one of those things that, week in, week out, I'm going to be doing my videos and just staying committed to that. So, obviously, big dream would be huge YouTube growth. But once again, that's all relative too, right? Because, when you have 20 subscribers, and I remember that, you're like, oh my gosh, if I were to only have 50 or 100, and then you get that, and it's if I were to only have 200 or 500. So it's all relative, of course. But that, and then, yeah, the book has been a project that I have been wanting to work on for a long time, and so I'm making a lot of progress on. It's a book for introverts called "Becoming an Audacious Introvert," and have been sent it to some agents, have some interest there, but nothing, finalized yet. So not sure if I'll go the traditional publishing route or the self-publishing route at this point. I'm not sure. I'm just going to stay committed and, see what happens. But yeah, big dream. Oh my gosh, I would love to be able to be on big stages and speak about my book and
What
speak
would you say
about
would be the dream
introverts.
stage? Because I mean, you've seen some really big stages. I mean, you beginning your growth journey, there was a Tony Robbins conference that you went to, right? And
Well, not as a speaker.
not as a speaker, but you went to, and I mean, not just that you've been on stages, but you've seen a lot of stages all around the world. Actually, That's one of the really cool things that I've seen of you and John traveling around, and you get to see a lot of different things because of the work that you guys do. What would be like the pinnacle stage that, if you could be on that stage, you go, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, I would say a couple. Definitely, I really like Ed Milet, and Ed Milet has a podcast, and Ed Milet does a lot of speaking and has conferences, so that would be really cool.
Ed, we're calling you
Um,
out. I know you're not listening to this
yeah,
podcast, but Ed Milet, right
yeah,
now, get Antoinette Griffin
yeah.
on today.
And hey, Ed Milet, you need to be a guest on Nathan Cook's podcast
I
as well. You
agree.
have your own podcast, but you need to be a guest on Nathan's, and you need to have Nathan be a guest on your podcast.
See, we're just
And
going to
me
call him out.
too. And me too, while you're at it.
I love it.
And and then probably I would say Live to Lead. That's the Maxwell's conference, and I mean that would be totally a sense of satisfaction since I'm on the Maxwell leadership team to be speaking at one of the Live to Lead conferences. That would be really neat.
Mm. As you're talking about that, I was thinking about this because you've been you've studied a lot of different things. You are, I would say, very well versed, almost expert level in a lot of different topics. But just because you know a topic doesn't mean it fits you really well. I think of David, standing before Saul, and Saul says, "Hey, here's all this armor. Put all this armor on." And he puts it on. He's like, "This doesn't fit. This doesn't feel right." And truly, the message of or the message to introverts truly does feel like the perfect fit for you. What has coming to that message done for you in terms of vision and also in terms of confidence when you get up to speak? Like when someone asks you to speak, I would imagine you have a list of things that you could speak on. But in the back of my head, I think speaking to introverts on how to be more confident as an introvert.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's the thing that I'm most passionate about for sure. And that's the thing that I would say that I come most alive in talking about and that I'm the most confident talking about for
What
sure.
what does it do for you knowing that message? Because I think a lot of people search for a message to give, and they feel like it's close, but they don't quite get it. What is it like to actually have that message in your hand, knowing what it is that you really want to deliver to the world?
Well, I believe that it changes lives, and like I said, I hear that from, comments from people that watch my channel. I hear that from my students when I teach my class that they're going, "Oh my gosh, I'm showing up completely differently now," which makes me excited about this book because I feel like once again I can offer people hope, and not only hope, but I can offer them specific strategies to be able to show up more boldly, more audacious, without giving up their true wiring and who they are at their core.
Mm, I love that so much. Antoinette, I have loved having you on the show. I have one more question that I want to ask you. But before I ask you, hey, if you guys are listening, if you're watching this, make sure you subscribe, like, give us a comment. We'd love to hear some of your feedback. What do you want to know from Antoinette? And make sure you go over to her YouTube page. We'll have her YouTube page in the show notes here so you can easily click over there. But make sure you subscribe because truly she has some incredible content, and share it with your introverted friends. It will help them be confident in what they're doing, help them to be bold. And, right after I get off this, I'm going to make sure Willow goes over and she's going to make sure and subscribe after we get off. Antoinette, there are so many people that are actually introverted. And I'm curious, what would you say to the introvert of Antoinette 20, 30 years ago, who kind of can't get out of her own way? What would you say to her as maybe a motivation to keep moving forward? But also, what would the first step be for that person to take a step?
The fact that no one is as confident as they appear. And so often we look at other people and we feel like they have it all together and I don't. And knowing that, the most confident person out there still questions themselves, still has their insecurities. And we like to say that we don't compare ourselves to other people, but we are comparing ourselves to other people. And so realizing that I as far as what I would have told myself back then is no, you're not less than. And so quit acting like it. Yeah, quit shrinking back.
I love it.
And as far as for other people too, I would say it's the same thing. Don't doubt yourself. You are well equipped. And just because you're introverted doesn't mean that you're odd or, like I said, less than. It just means that you are more reserved and you get your energy from within. And you have to, preserve your social battery, but it doesn't have anything to do with how confident you are or not, or how much you can be in a front facing role or speak on stages. It has nothing to do with that.
That's so powerful. Absolute gold. Make sure that you are looking out for Becoming an Audacious Introvert, the book from Antoinette Griffin. It's going to be fantastic. I better send her some money so I can get a pre-order on that book. But I am so glad that you guys spent some time with us today, listening in to her story, her journey. And truly, make sure that you subscribe, leave us a comment, and until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.